You're with Julian on the Brown Note, and what to do with a problem like Keir Starmer, the UK's Prime Minister and loathed leader of the UK Labour Party, is a conundrum. So we've got this Vichy Labour government in the UK, which everyone hates, and most painfully Labour voters hate, because Keir Starmer is a rolled gold Tory, and we all know it, and we all hate him for it. He's got no friends at all in any direction. And, people throw up this thing about the election victory. I'll get to that. Absolute garbage. We've got a Tory-guided Labour Party, but also a hugely incompetent one. His judgment has been terrible in which fights to choose, and how to fight them, and who to side with. He's continually putting everyone offside. So what do you do with that problem? Because in Australia we had this thing where the major parties kept removing their own leaders. And Labour started it. So Kevin Rudd was the first Labour Prime Minister for a very long time. And he was removed by his own party before his own term. Julia Gillard stepped in, Rudd came back, and they lost the next election. And then Tony Abbott came in for the Conservatives and was removed by his own party. Malcolm Turnbull came in, was removed by his own party. And then Scott Morrison lost an election. So I would normally say, because we had the same thing with Anthony Albanese, the Australian Prime Minister, who's Labour, where there was this big, completely fake push in the media to remove him. Not overtly, but hammering him to the point that in the past would have resulted in a Labour leader stepping down. And luckily they didn't, because we would have been back into this cycle of removing leaders, and then the public are just vote swapping every now and again, and it would have been dreadful. But we don't have that same paradigm now, because the Conservative parties in the UK and in Australia are dead. So Labour is in a very unique position, which is no matter how bad they do, their opposition isn't there. In Australia, it was always neck and neck. So whenever some scandal blew up, like the carbon tax, it was enough to remove the government. But as we found this time around, with the Conservative vote cratering, the Labour are in a much stronger position to take strong movements, and that includes getting rid of their leader. He is completely out of step with Labour voters, and he's just trying to do that age-old thing, which, the Democrats did it in America, and Labour tried doing it here in Australia, which is to appeal to voters that will never vote for you. Why not piss off Conservative voters 100%? They're never going to vote for you. You don't need to appeal to them. So how to tackle him? And I think he does need to be removed. He's like this cancer inside Labour. And it's like they'll only allow Labour to be elected if it's the wrong Labour. If it's a true Labour Party, they'll do everything in their power in the establishment and media to stop them ever getting elected. So we end up with someone like Tony Blair. Starmer's even worse than Blair. Tony Blair was swanning around with Rupert Murdoch. I think he might even be godparent to one of Rupert Murdoch's grandchildren. Horrible stuff. But Keir Starmer doesn't have any charisma. Tony Blair was like this evangelical preacher, cultish, awful man, war criminal. And Keir Starmer just doesn't have anything. He's just got no charisma at all. The UK has continually been denied a decent government. And I would say that the Blair government was probably the closest they've got to a decent government in the last 50 years. But in general, they try to make sure that Labour is neutered when it comes to power. They tried it here in Australia as well, with Bill Shorten wanted to address economic unfairness by removing lots of juicy handouts from the government to people that already had money, and the press united against him, causing us to end up with Scott Morrison, and that really went well. And and the worst thing about it for me is that people say no one will vote for a socialist Labour Party. This is garbage. What actually happens is Tony Blair and Keir Starmer inherited election victories that would have been won by any person in the Labour Party in charge. He moved into the position at the right moment. And it's the same with Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer presided over the lowest voter turnout. He won with the lowest overall voter turnout since 1928, which is when modern voting began in the UK. Anyone saying that he was the reason that people voted Labour, they hated the Tories so much that in the end they actually voted. And Jeremy Corbyn, the greatest leader of my lifetime of a political party in the UK, lost the Brexit election, which was always going to be about one single solitary thing, and wasn't that a great thing as well? We need the UK is broken beyond belief. I feel so happy that Australia is doing so much better. It's broken in every direction. So why not have a revolution now? The Tory party's dead. Reform aren't ever going to be in a position, not in near terms, to win a populist vote. They might get 30%, but they're not going to win. Why not have this revolution? A populist revolution in Labour from the grassroots up. Take over the party. It will take a while, but they've got time. I can't see any way back for the Conservatives now. They, like the Aussies, they wed themselves to populist, right-wing, Marxist, woke politic nonsense, and people don't want to vote for that outside of America. I mean, it's the opposite way round in Australia, because the electorate, who were Conservative voters, actually turned on the Conservative Party for being too populist right-wing and went out to vote for what we call the Teals, who were old Conservatives who were nice and like gay marriage and action on climate change. So they hemorrhaged votes one way. In the UK, the Tories hemorrhaged votes the other way, because all the populist right-wingers went to the Reform Party, who are even more populist right-wing than the Tories were. And Keir Starmer's scared of his own shadow. He doesn't seem to have any courage in standing up for anything, even though he's in a position of incredible power at the moment, where he doesn't really face any threat from any opposition party, only from his own rank and file. Keir Starmer doesn't give a reason for anyone to vote Labour. They have to hold their nose and vote Labour. And we saw with the last election in America, voters won't always hold their nose. If enough of them sit out, like happened last year in America, you can lose. He relies on media support. They took down Jeremy Corbyn because of one major issue. He supported Palestinian human rights. And the British Christian Zionist movement is probably as wed to the fortunes of Israel as the Israeli Zionist movement. And there is one thing that you cannot be in politics in the UK without these very small group of very powerful people taking you down, and that is anti-Israeli. As we've seen, I mean, Jeremy Corbyn got called every name under the sun, all of it garbage, and Keir Starmer was pretty much front and centre in that, but so were the BBC and so was The Guardian. And people say Labour governments are always like this, but in the UK, that's the only ones that ever allow past, the gatekeepers ever allow in power. So now they're in power. Now's the chance for the Corbyn side of the equation, who are the majority of Labour voters, to take the reins of the party back, because Keir Starmer is an absolute failure. And he isn't even a Labour person. I said many times, no one should be called Sir Keir Starmer in leading the Labour Party. Why are you knighted at such a young age? He's like just showing how much of the establishment he is. So John McDonnell is an independent MP for Hayes and Harlington and was Shadow Chancellor for Labour from 2015 to 2020. He's come out and called for a grassroots leadership challenge to Keir Starmer's government. He said, unless party members, affiliated unions and MPs stand up and assert themselves and take control of Labour, In the next period of its history, we may not only lose government, we could also lose the party. Keir Starmer feels like the traditional Labour leader, which is an interim government. The Tories make it so bad that every now and again the press decides that we need to have Labour in power just to make things better. And the Blair years were vastly better than the Tory years that followed. So they allow Labour through, but they make sure they're neutered by the time, co-opted by the Murdoch press, or neutered in every way like Keir Starmer. So he feels like an interim manager, a bench warmer for the Tories. But the Tories don't exist anymore, so why are we using the old paradigm? Let's get these grassroots people who all support Jeremy Corbyn, and even if it wasn't Jeremy Corbyn, people like him, to come up through the ranks and get rid of Keir Starmer in a no confidence vote maybe 2 years down the track. But he is trashing Labour and he's got nothing to offer. The Tories are dead in the UK and in Australia, so why have someone that's a Tory-lite Labour leader? Why appeal to their voters when they don't even have any? Remove Keir Starmer.